If you're here, you might believe a lie of the workforce, and that is that your pay is naturally going to take care of itself if you're a hard worker. Well, the truth is that pay goes to those who ask, not to those who wait. I hope to teach you some of the secrets that I've learned being on the other side of the table about pay negotiation. One of the most frequent questions that my Rent My Brain clients ask is, how do I maximize my pay? And I get it. If you're going to go to work every day, you want to make the most amount of pay possible. One of the things we're going to explore in this class is, how do I ask for pay and what can I even ask for? I want to go over what is leverage, how do you know whether you have it or not, and what it can do for you. I'm also going to talk about a model by which you can ask for raises or negotiate your pay if you're getting a new job. And we'll talk about some of the sticky problems that I hear about all the time, like a coworker who makes more than you, even though you have greater experience. Or how about when you're asked to do more work, but they don't necessarily give you a pay increase that goes along with that? How do you deal with that situation? Or a counteroffer you get from a company, but you really want to stay where you're at. These are some of the things that you'll learn today. Here's some advice I want to give you for the class. Make sure that you do the assignments that I give you.
You can download the guide in the description to follow along.
You can use the scripts that I give you, but they're generic scripts, and you really do have to make this yours and make it very unique to the value proposition you bring to a company. We are teaching you today how to market you, so do the homework. So if you feel like the company is holding all the cards and you don't know where your leverage is, or if you feel like you are not exactly sure the right way to go about asking for money, take this class and you'll walk away with the tools that you need to be able to get what you deserve. Leverage is everything when it comes to pay negotiation. And yet so many people that I talk to think that leverage is something that only the company has. It simply isn't true. Let's talk about leverage for a minute, and then I'll tell you some of my botched experiences and how to avoid having those yourself. First of all, leverage in its purest form is, I've got something you need. And we think companies have leverage because the company has the job and we want it. Or the company knows what the pay range is for a position, and yet we don't necessarily know how much they're willing to pay for this or how high they'll go. We also don't know if the company has other people that they like and where we stand in the process. So it may appear on the surface that the company has all the leverage, but it simply isn't true. In this section, we're going to talk about what is leverage and how do you know whether you have it so that you can make a better ask with the ability to get a yes more often than not. Let's go further on this topic of leverage. Here's examples of when you have leverage. Let's say that the company needs to increase its sales by 20% and they've made a commitment to the board. And you come to them and you have a track record of 120% of hitting your quota. Now you have leverage. What if the company's trying to pursue a short-term video strategy and you're one of 10 or 12 people in the entire nation that has done that before? Now you have leverage. 3 team members just left your team, leaving the company short-handed. All of a sudden, the company can't get done what it needs to. All of a sudden, you have hella leverage. So that's what leverage is about. And let's talk about all the ways that you have leverage and how to assess it. Positive leverage is what we want to use because that's the most effective way to get what you're asking for. Negative leverage is when you use something that can put the company in a bad position, but sometimes it is necessary to use negative leverage. And we'll talk about examples of both. First, let's delve into positive leverage. So again, what does the company have that you need? Let's talk about 4 of the main ways. Number 1, skills. You have a skill set that is needed by the company and not a lot of people have. Now, sometimes the company doesn't realize that they don't have that skill set. So this is where the idea of understanding your value proposition gets really important. Is there something, a system that you can use in the company that nobody else can use? Are you an expert on how to create reports that the company needs that nobody else can put together? What information do you have that makes the company run better that isn't broadly shared by a lot of people? If there's 20 customer service people who all have the same knowledge, you probably don't have a skills leverage point unless you do it better than other people. Then you would have a skills leverage point. Where people fall down is they don't understand how to position their results. They think I work well or I'm a top performer, but they don't have the metrics or the data to back it up. The language of the business is numbers. I want to stop there because I want you to think about that for a minute. Until you can speak in the language of numbers, you're not likely to get what you want. Your results have to be transitioned into numbers and data in order for it to be compelling for a company. So it's not enough for you to say, I think I deserve a raise because I work really hard. What does work for you is to say, I've increased the number of calls that we've taken by 20%. I take 20% more calls than the nearest customer service person. That translates into a score with my customers that's higher than other people have. My average net promoter score is 94. Understanding the metrics that drive success in your role is a really important part of whether you can actually ask for a raise and get it. And it's also really important if you're looking for a job. Imagine if I go and interview for a job. Let's say that we get down to the wire and they're saying, what should we pay this person? They're talking about it behind closed doors. If I have been able to say, for example, let's say I'm a recruiter. If I can say, the last company that I went in, I was able to reduce our external recruiting spend by about $500,000, and I was able to reduce our time to hire by 20%, all of a sudden I become somebody interesting. Add a few more metrics on. I implemented a system that allowed our recruiters to get to people quicker and cut the time in half from when they apply to when they're interviewed. That allowed us to secure more deals faster because time kills deals. If I can convey that in an interview, the rate of pay that I get, or at least the argument I make about the rate of pay I should get, is going to be so much more rich than going in and saying, I'm an excellent recruiter. I have 10 years of experience and I really have excelled in everywhere that I've worked. You must bring metrics to bear and talk about your results. Now, a lot of departments don't have metrics. They don't have a scorecard for you. And so if you are thinking that you're going to ask for a raise or search for a job, start tracking metrics that you can use and you can quote when you are negotiating your pay. The second leverage you need to consider is whether you have a competitive job offer. If you're searching for a job and another company is coming after you, that is the truest form of leverage. And I'll tell you why. It's because, like a house whose value we're not exactly sure of until the house sells, your value isn't entirely clear to an employer until you have another offer on the table. Compensation just isn't as buttoned down as people think it is. There isn't an exact rate of pay for an exact skill set, and there's nuances about people's skill sets. So the truest form of leverage is that somebody else wants you and they're willing to pay X dollars for you. Now that comes with some negatives as well, because getting a counteroffer from a company, if you're already working inside of a company, that can be a difficult process and suck a lot of energy out of you. And B, by the time that you actually get that other offer, you might be so disillusioned with your company that you choose to leave. So there are some risks, but it's an excellent way to have leverage. Let me explain how it works if you're looking for a job. If you're down to the final candidates for a job and you have a counteroffer from another company or an imminent offer, the company is going to want to give you the best and highest offer that they can give you. You're going to maximize your pay. So that's where having competitive offers is really, really important. Now, don't lie. That does not work well unless you want to take the risk of getting caught or not getting the job. But if you do have a competitive offer, it can be very effective. The third point of leverage is about your know-how, specialized know-how. I talked to a gentleman who was one of only a handful of people that knew how to do this one thing that this company needed. And because he had that know-how, he was able to command much more than what anybody else could get for this job. So you have to know that you do have a specialized skill. And you have to do a little homework on the company. When I was early in my career, I realized our company didn't have an affirmative action plan. I didn't know how to do it, but I volunteered to learn how and get that done because I realized it was a compliance issue that our company wasn't taking care of. I quickly learned the skill set. I hated it, by the way. It was really difficult and not in my wheelhouse, but I was able to get an affirmative action plan in place. And all of a sudden I was the go-to person on affirmative action. Ironically, our company was audited. This is not what a company wants to have happen on your first plan. But we were audited. We were not fined with any violations. And all of a sudden, I became the only expert in the company that knew how to do this one thing. That was obviously important because hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential fines were avoided. So look around you and say, what can I learn? Or what do I know? Or what does the company need to have somebody know that nobody else does? That's a leverage point for you.
Now, the fourth leverage point I want you to think about
is risk. Risk is an interesting one. Let's say that the company is going public and they need to have certain things done in order for the company to go public in a certain time frame. Millions upon millions of dollars are at stake. And if you're working in a department where certain assignments need to be done, that is how you can use leverage. You would want to ask for a raise when they need you the most. So risk is a really good one. Risk is also something you take a look at when other people have left the company and it only leaves a few people to do the work. The company is at risk for not doing what it says or not completing its goals, and it becomes your leverage point. There are two more kinds of leverage a person has. One is value proposition, understanding and knowing and being able to articulate your value proposition. Most people can't. Most people say, I have a job, that's what I do, but they don't think about it in terms of what's the value I can bring to the role. And it's very powerful when you're able to articulate why you and not somebody else for a role. We're going to talk more about value proposition and how you determine yours, so I'll leave it at that for now. And the last point of leverage is urgency. So often a company has deadlines, projects, client commitments, things that absolutely have to get done. And especially in today's environment where people are leaving jobs and not staying very long, urgency can be a huge leverage point. You might be able to help the company get what it needs by being the person that is able to get it done faster or help them meet that deadline. Now, all of these things we've talked about with leverage require you to know a lot about the company. And that's something a lot of people won't do their homework on. But let's talk about how you do that. To have maximum leverage, you got to do your homework. And you need to understand and ask as many questions as you can to your manager about what does the company need. Here's a few questions that I would lead out by asking my manager. What's the one thing that if I do it makes the biggest difference to the company? What's something that if we did it in this department would absolutely help the company in ways that would get noticed? What's something that someone else has not been able to accomplish in this role that you wish they could accomplish? What are people looking for us to do in this department? What would a win look like for the CEO or for the vice president of this department? When you start to understand that and scour over your website and understand what's the company's strategy. Is the company trying to go public? Is the company trying to have an active and aggressive acquisition schedule so that they bring in more companies? Are they trying to grow organically? Are they trying to shift their focus from one thing to another or move into a new product line? The more you understand about that, the more you can answer the questions of where do I have leverage? Your first assignment is this. I want you to go to all of those categories of leverage. You'll get the homework assignment. And I want you to rate 1 through 10, how much leverage do I think I have? And specifically write down, how do I have leverage in this regard? What are my data points or numbers that would show I have this? What do I know about the company? Because when you can answer that question and tell the right story to the company, that begins the framework for an effective ask that's going to get you a yes. I'd like to tell you a story about a client because I think this will help drive the point home. Now, this is a story about a client who worked in a consulting company that consulted with other big companies. She was a senior person on the team, and she was very familiar with the projects that they were delivering and had been there for several years. She was not happy with the raises that she had received and really felt like she was adding enough value that she should get a pretty significant raise. She worked with me and she actually went through the homework to create the story about why she was so good and why she was a person on the team they needed to give a raise to. But her boss came back and surprised her with this information. He said, "You are wonderful. You do all of those things and you are on my list to give a raise to. But unfortunately, 3 other team members on the team have come to me first. And they've asked for a raise, and unlike you, they've gone much longer without a raise." So what do you do in that situation? You've got a compelling story to tell. You're adding value to the company. I think the typical person would probably try and go get a counteroffer. But we talked about the ways that she could turn this around. A, she was very well versed with the budget. She was senior enough, she understood where there was a wiggle room in the budget. And she also understood this very important concept. You're not going to get a raise unless you're able to talk a story that will pass your manager's manager. So she needed to create a story that could go up the chain and really make sense. She also understood she needed to solve the problem for her manager. He already had 3 people he needed to give a raise to. She was not going to win that battle. So she went into the budget and she was able to find a way that they could save additional money. Then she went back to her manager and she said, I would propose that you give the other people their raise first, but here's a path that can get me 50% of the raise in 3 months after we save a certain amount of money, and a pathway to give me the second part of the raise in another 6 months. She gave the answer to the story and let her manager take that up the chain. So not only now did she understand I'm senior and I add a lot of value, but I know how to save us money, another value point. She used hard numbers in her argument and said, here's the $15,000 that I would like for a raise, but here's how we are able to accommodate it and still get the client what they need. And it keeps me happy. So she ended up getting the raise after this request. And she got it because she understood A, her value proposition, B, numbers, and C, how to create a story that was compelling enough that she could get a yes. Here's another example of using a bit of negative leverage to get the pay ask that you have. There was a woman I worked with. She had been a superstar in her department. She had loved the work up to this point. But 4 months ago, they brought in a new leader. And this leader had a vastly different approach than she was accustomed to. They butted heads at every turn. And even though she was lucky, because in the positive column for leverage, she had been very successful at helping the company hit their goals. She knew a lot about other departments, another point of leverage, so the skill set was very strong. She was also a female. The company was trying to promote more females from within. So she had some really strong leverage points. Her manager, on the other hand, was a little bit at a loss because the new manager was new, didn't have that credibility, but ultimately knew that she had to be able to run the department the way she wanted. So there was friction, a little bit of negativity there. And what my client knew is that the company and her manager specifically was getting really frustrated. So how did she ask for what she wanted? First of all, she made a list of all the leverage points that she had, some of which we just went over. I'm going to add to the ones we went over. The company probably, or at least the manager, would likely like to have her out of her hair. There's all these points. There's potentially that she's a female. The company doesn't want to let go of a female. Negative leverage. Her manager wants her out of the company. She's pretty sure about that. But on the positive side, she's been an excellent performer. She knows every department in the company and how to intersect with each one and knows all of the leaders. Best leverage of all, she's had results. So what we did is we crafted an ask so that she could leave the company with grace and get money to do it. We were able to say, you know what? I get the feeling that you would prefer to have the freedom and flexibility to run it the way you want and eliminate this point of friction. And quite frankly, we're both good people, and I think we should both be able to land on our feet and excel. Would it be possible for me to help you achieve your goals in the next 3 months? Because deadlines were coming up. Urgency was also a point of leverage, while at the same time searching for another job. And at the end of those 3 months, would you be willing to give me a severance to leave the company so that I can look for a job while I have a job and still land on my feet? Why did the company jump at this? Because the company didn't want a discrimination claim. They didn't want to performance manage a top performer out. They didn't want the risk of a female leaving the company. They knew that that was difficult. So we used leverage, both good and bad, and we were able to get her exactly what she asked for. She was able to go to another company, land on her feet. The company was thrilled because they could suddenly pursue the path that the new manager wanted without any risk to the company. So that's how leverage works. Let's talk about when you need leverage to secure the best offer and you're getting a new job. The best thing you can do is understand the results you got at the other company. The results that you got and translating those into numbers of this is how the company was before I came and this is how it is after. That's the most powerful way for you to get the leverage that you want. And ask questions. I go on LinkedIn and I ask people who work at that company, tell me about the company. What's good? What's bad? Understand and do your homework so you can go into your job interviews by saying, I understand that you're pursuing an aggressive merger acquisition strategy. I have experience in 5 merger acquisitions that in my last company helped bring in an additional $20 million. Let's talk about then leverage when you're interviewing for a job. Let's talk about the ways that you get it and really make the point come home. If you're interviewing for a job and you early in the process tell them what dollar amount you're hoping to get, you've lost your leverage. You want to create a proposal and have a chance through 2 or 3 or 4 interviews to let them get excited about your value proposition and about the results you have. It likely isn't to happen in one interview. You need to slow drip all of those great results that you have in order to increase your leverage. The other thing you need to do before your interview is understand from people who work there or news stories or the website of the company, understand the strategy the company's trying to pursue. Understand what the company's trying to accomplish and where they're not hitting their goals and where they are hitting their goals. So you can craft your own value proposition about the skills that you have and can bring to the table that will help them accomplish what they're doing. The longer you can wait to talk about compensation, the more leverage you have. The moment you throw out a number, that's the number the company's going to go off of and give you something slightly more, slightly less, and that's it. So if you wait longer and you give them more data points that say why you can help the company get what it needs, you will increase your pay package by about 10%. That's my experience, is those people who are really good at doing this and waiting until there's only a few people left. Remember, scarcity is a leverage point. And when you are the only one standing or 1 or 2 people are only standing, you have more leverage and the scales get balanced into your favor and away from the company. I want you now to do the homework assignment that's attached, and I want you to determine how much leverage you have. If you're an internal employee, you have the benefit of knowing a lot more information. But if you're not and you're actually trying to understand your leverage points for a company that you're interviewing with, do some homework.